I fundamentally believe that in 5 to 10 years, there will not be e-commerce websites.
Okay, welcome back to the Marketing Playbook, presented by Extend and Ebo. Here you'll take away 3 game-winning marketing plays every episode to take back to your team. I'm your host, Mark Friedman, and my career has been focused on direct-to-consumer marketing, direct mail, physical retail, and digital commerce. This is episode number 120, and my guest is Gavin Hewitt. Gavin is a longtime friend who has developed a successful career in helping technology companies go to market. With successful stints at bluecore and Attentive, he's now the COO at Velou, where he and the team have developed the first product catalog agent. We talked about his childhood adventures, 14 different schools, and how the ability to manage change has helped him develop his very successful career. Gavin is a very positive person, and that comes through in the conversation. Enjoy the show. Before we get started, a quick thank you, as always, to Max Brandstetter of the Wild Business Growth Podcast for producing this episode. You can reach him at maxpodcasting.com to help bring your podcast to life. Let's open the playbook. Ready, break. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the Marketing Playbook Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Gavin Hewitt. With over 20 years in the software and technology sector, primarily in SaaS, Gavin has been at the forefront of scaling startups into industry leaders. As a key player in building 2 $1 billion plus valuation companies, he was a founding team member and VP of sales at bluecore and played a pivotal role in Attentive's rapid growth from Series C to over $450 million in revenue. Gavin's expertise spans go-to-market strategy, sales leadership, and customer success, with a deep belief that a company's greatest asset is its people. His leadership philosophy centers on collaboration, innovation, and resilience, guiding high-performing teams to drive impactful results. Now, as COO at Velou, he continues to push the boundaries of AI-driven commerce, helping brands and retailers harness cutting-edge technology for growth. Gavin, welcome to the show.
Mark, thank you so much for having me.
Good to see you again. Thanks for making the time. Can't wait to delve into your very interesting past. You know, one of the things we do on this show every time is get the guest's first story. It's always interesting to hear how people were brought up, family life, and how ultimately perhaps there was some things in their early life that would have suggested their career would take the path that it has. So what's your first story?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored that people would want to hear a go-to-market story, so very excited. I live in Seattle. I've got an amazing wife, Shauna, who's a badass physician. We've got 3 kids, 14, 11, and 7. I guess from a growing up perspective, I grew up in between Alaska and Seattle, which is, I guess, somewhat unique for maybe some of your listeners. And I moved a lot. So it was my mom and I originally. My parents split when I was 6, and she and I moved a ton. My dad was a big part of my life, but I ended up going to 14 schools before I graduated high school. And most of our moving was, honestly due to economic reasons, just always kind of trying to find greener pastures. And my mom was a hustler. I saw firsthand what it took to really push just to make sure that we could make ends meet. And I had so much respect for her in the way she raised me and the values she provided to me while trying to juggle all the other things. So I'll always be indebted to her.
That's a nice story. 14 schools. That's quite a thing for a kid to have to, go through that kind of change.
Yeah, it's funny. I wouldn't change a thing. I think it made me the person I am today. And it gave me a lot of skills. I think I learned really quickly how to walk into a room and identify the people that I thought I wanted to be associated with. I was lucky. I was very athletic growing up. I played Division I soccer in college, and it was a huge part of my life. And so I think that sometimes the transition as an athlete was a little easier as I was bouncing from school to school. But I also made a lot of friends along the way. I can still, from each of those places that I live, give you somebody who I'm still in touch with or somebody that I care about.
I liked in your bio, you talk about, one of the greatest assets that a company has is its people. How did that become, part of your philosophy?
I think the people make the party, right? I just fundamentally, and actually, my wife and I talk about this a lot. She'll often ask me, like, why do you hire your friends? Because I've hired friends, right, from high school, friends from college, and I always say that, I mean, these are people that I care deeply about. These are people that I trust, right? And I think that in work, that is sort of what I've been able to build as well. We've built these sort of communities of people at bluecore, and I saw it firsthand at Attentive that, especially in this kind of early growth stage type company, you all just want to run through walls together, right? And so when you're doing that and there's like this collective lift associated with it, you just don't want to let anybody down, right? And so I think that that becomes a real driving force. It's almost, I mean, that one from my perspective, the respect of your peers in that environment is more important than the dollars that people are making, right? It really drives you to go that extra mile every single time. And I think we've built really cool cultures because of that.
You talked also in the bio about collaboration. That's kind of a buzzword often that you see. You do interviews with people. What are you good at? Well, I'm a good collaborator. But what does that really mean? You've worked in a number of companies on the sales side, on the go-to-market side. There's a technology team, there's leadership. How do you build that collaboration?
I mean, a good idea can come from anywhere. I think it's just being open to having the conversations, being available or accessible to the people on your team. I saw this a lot with Brian Malkerson from Attentive. He had this ability to like pull a thread and go deep really, really fast on subjects. And the way he did it was by engaging people and making sure that they had a voice. I thought that was fascinating. At Bluecore, we did things for the first couple years there. Everybody who joined the company had to take 100 level improv, right? Just figuring out how to collectively communicate, and nonverbal cues, which became a superpower when we were sitting in a boardroom with people and being able to like play off each other in I thought pretty magical ways. And I think that that collaboration piece is just, it's what fuels those early days, and it's what allows you to identify the things that will allow you to scale faster. And that's the thing that we're constantly looking for, is that single thing, that little nugget of information, that feedback from an SDR that we should change the subject line, that, in an outgoing email, that can fundamentally change a month, a quarter, a year for a company.
You mentioned bluecore a few times already. That's where you and I first had the opportunity to interact. This was, somewhere around 2014. You were there for 4 years. Let's talk just quickly about, the product that you were selling while you were at bluecore.
Yeah, Bluecore was an amazing experience. Let me start there. I think it was such a cool time in my life as someone kind of young in the space who found a team of people that were doing amazing things. And the original idea coming out of there, ironically, Fiz and I worked at a failed startup. CEO of Bluecore worked at a failed startup prior to me joining Bluecore, and we actually were called Trigger Mail when we first started. And I remember he came up to me and he said, "Oh, I'm leaving our crummy startup and I'm gonna go start an email company." And I was like, "Good luck, dude. Like that's not gonna go anywhere." And about 3 months later, he came back with this amazing demo of the product. And I was like, "Oh my goodness, like how can I get my hands on this? I know we've got something here." And so I joined the team, and we originally were selling triggered emails, right? Cart abandonment emails, browse abandonment. We had these cutting edge ones like search abandonment, right? Based on what people typed into the search bar, and even price drop triggers. Back in late 2013, 2014, this was bleeding edge technology. And we had this very evangelical sale. We just went out and we were so excited to just push this product. We believed in it. The moment you got it live, it converted. And then we started building a big business. We eventually raised some capital, more capital, and ultimately rebranded to Bluecore, and then got much more focused on the personalization space, and then eventually the kind of execution in channels, ESP, SMS, various channels. And it was one of the most fulfilling work experiences of my life. I really loved being with that team.
It's funny. I was at Steve Madden at the time, and somebody that worked with me, came into my office one day, and she was at a conference, and she says, "You got to hear about this new company that I met with, Bluecore." And at the time, you had already had 300 or so logos, and I had never heard of you. And George Kunkel, who's a friend of mine and was at Bluecore, he was the sales guy there. And, as soon as we heard the pitch, we signed up and, we were a fairly, relatively early adopter, in that business.
You were, and I love that you mentioned George. I think, back to why these things are so fulfilling. Watching people like George go on in their career and become leaders and, be successful. That's been something that a lot of that team from Blue Core and a lot of the team that's come out of Attentive has been able to achieve. It's been really, really amazing for me to watch that, just their maturation and their success.
You're a sales guy, I would say, by heart, by nature. You're very outspoken in a positive way. You're a gregarious kind of guy, but selling is tough sometimes. How do you deal with, the ups and downs? There's quotas to make. You can't move the game as fast as you might like to. People like me take forever sometimes to open up the pocketbook and make a decision. So how do you deal with the challenges of being a tech sales guy?
Yeah, and in startups, right? I mean, you also add the fact that within early stage companies, you feel like you're taking over the world and going out of business in the same day, right? It's this spot market of emotion. I will tell you that I struggled with being a sales guy at first. I didn't like the moniker. I didn't like when people said, "Oh, you're a sales guy," right? It just sort of, I felt like, there's so much more to me, right? It took me a while to get to the fact that one, I've never sold a product I didn't believe in, right? And that really starts with the team, right? First, I believe in the team, then I understand the product, and then I'm able to go out and tell people that I truly believe that this is going to make their business better, right? And that's one. The other thing that I also like to point out to people is that sales is job creation, right? So when I think about these early stage companies and these sellers on our teams, it is that revenue that allows us to build and scale and, raise more capital potentially or whatever it is, and ultimately build a company and employ people and have that experience together. And so it took me some time, but shifted that view of kind of a salesperson to this career that offers a ton of value to a lot of people. When you can reframe it like that, the resiliency comes with it. I can go in and speak with somebody like you, and you were always tough, right? Like your ability to ask the right questions, the hard questions, to keep us on our toes, to require that data was available, to prove our business case. Those things can be challenging, they can be frustrating, but ultimately, if you believe in your product, you know it's going to work, you're more than happy to jump over those hurdles just to get to a point to prove that your technology is going to work for that person. And when it does, like, talk about an awesome feeling, right? Getting a call from you saying, "Oh my gosh," right? Like, our open rates and click-through rates and conversions are through the roof, right? Those are things that we sort of take with us. And we also, I will say, resiliency comes, this is back to the team. Sales is a team sport. People always think of salespeople like individuals. It is not. Like, we have a whole channel. This is for everybody here who gets cold calls. They're all recorded so we can sort of, have people learn, right? We can train, do some enablement with them. But the ones where people just go off on them, or the ones where people, are sort of funny, if you will, we put them in a channel and everybody rallies around it, right? Like, I joke that those cold outreach people, right? 99% of the stuff they put out in the world, they get nothing, right? A 0.5%, they literally get told to F off, and a 0.5% they get a meeting. And we celebrate those meetings in such a big way that, it just continues to be the fuel for a lot of these organizations.
It's funny. I mean, I have not told people to F off, as you said, but it's also, it's hard to deal with cold calls, cold emails, and what have you. And we talk on this show a lot about empathy for people looking for jobs, empathy for salespeople who are trying to put food on their table by doing their job and doing the outreach. And I try, and I wish more people were able to devote some time to being empathetic to people in that way. So, hopefully somebody will get the message out of this.
But I will say there's a lot of noise out there and there's a lot of bad actors as well. So I think it really makes it challenging for retailers, for marketers to cut through the noise and really figure out what's real. Part of why I really love events, especially at our stage of company, right, is to be face to face, to be able to have a real conversation with somebody versus just filling their inbox, right?
Marketers, we all know that customer relationship doesn't end at checkout. Building a real and meaningful relationship starts after purchase. That's where Extend comes in. Extend's suite of post purchase solutions keeps your customers happy and coming back for more. With Extend, retailers can set up custom rules and workflows to handle shipping issues, fulfillment errors, returns, and exchanges through a dynamic, branded experience, saving you time and money. Extend's integrated fraud mitigation technology helps identify and stop bad actors before they impact your bottom line with no agent intervention. Extend also provides unique value added services like product and shipping protection that can help you drive additional revenue while offsetting the financial risk of these various post purchase issues. And best of all, customers love Extend. With a 96% CSAT score and 61% average boost in LTV, you'll have happier customers, fewer headaches, and more repeat sales. Visit extend.com to see how you can uplevel your post purchase strategy today. Is it easier to sell for a company that's brand new and you're trying to establish new technology and a new product versus, something that's more tried and true, already has a stable of companies that are successful?
I joke often you can be boring as all get out and sell Salesforce, Adobe, Oracle, right? Nobody's going to get fired for buying those. Most of the people who are selling, there's great sellers, I'm sure, but many of them don't really stand and deliver on their own, right? They're sort of quarterbacking deals, bringing in solutions engineers and CS people to help them sort of move those deals forward. Early stage is hard. There's a different expectation, right? Like you have to be able to work a sales cycle from beginning to end, and be able to do demos and be able to think, very critically and build those business cases for those prospects. And you have to also be able to evangelize. You can't be boring, right? You have to have that fire in your belly, and you want the person who you're speaking with to feel that. You want them to buy in to the fact that you're doing something really special. And I think that's actually, for me, that is harder to do and a harder sale at big companies because I would have trouble getting that excited. At an early stage, again, back to the team, like that ability to know that you're excited not just about this product, but this group of people that are providing this product, right? Makes it really amazing. I will say though, there is a middle ground that is so much fun, and that is attentive. I joined attentive at a time deals were falling on the floor for people, right? It was just like everyone, people were signing up every single day and it was working, right? The product worked. People were super happy. That was so much fun. And so I think those companies are really rare, those like true hyper growth companies that scale so quickly and have the ability to also deliver. And so I think those are so much fun too. That being said, I keep coming back to early stage. This is the phase that I love the most. I love finding that new piece of technology, evangelizing it to someone, and ultimately getting them on board and growing a big business.
Yeah, so you got to attentive before I did. I definitely wanted to talk about that. You were VP of sales, and the comment you made about deals falling on the floor for people. You were there in the middle of the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, I talk about this a lot. Like, there are great technologies. I think of bluecore as like an engineering-led, amazing technology, right? Not a sort of sales-led organization. Whereas Attentive was very much a sales-led organization, and they had this ability to move really fast, kind of eliminate any barriers to deals coming through and proving the value and winning the deals long term, right? But you also, no matter the company that you're scaling, there has to be a little bit of luck. And I think that COVID and March of 2020 was a huge boon to Attentive's business. Brands were looking for ways to engage with customers. We weren't going into stores anymore, right? People were scared that nobody was going to be even buying anything. And all of a sudden, this new channel opened up. We were all staring at our phones, clicking. And all of a sudden marketers were like, hey, I want to start texting people. And consumers were saying, hey, I'm going to allow brands onto my phone. I'm actually going to communicate with them on this very personal device that I have. And I think that, you mix sort of good technology, great people, and timing, and those are the companies that explode.
I've told this story on the show before, and I've been lucky enough to have Fayez Mohamud, was the co-founder of Bluecore on the show. Brian Long, co-founder of Attentive, has also been a guest, on the show, and now we got Gavin Hewitt, as a guest on the show. But you talk about Attentive being marketing led. In 2019, I was with a company called Amerimark. I sat next door to one of our brand presidents. And roughly at the same time, we both got an email from Attentive. And it was some outlandish marketing email that said they didn't even know, who we were. And they said, we could drive $5 million of incremental revenue in your business tomorrow. All right. I was a marketing guy. I am a marketing guy. I look at that. I hit delete because I'm thinking that is BS. Right. The guy next door to me, who was a merchant and a general business manager, walks into my office and says, I just got this. How are we not working with these guys? We can drive $5 million of incremental revenue. Well, we had a debate. I lost. He said, have the meeting. So I had the meeting. We wound up working with Attentive, and that was my first implementation of many of Attentive. So it's funny, what one piece of marketing works for one, may not work for another. But that's why it's all about throwing the darts and seeing which ones you can hit the bullseye on. Sticking to Attentive, but other companies as well, they start off oftentimes with their core product. Attentive, was SMS. How do these companies ultimately evolve and, move away from being what I'll call a one-trick pony?
That's a great question. When you kind of start building a company in this space, you're actually guided and told to focus, right? Be vertical specific, be a domain expert, be the best at what you do, right? Nobody's going to care about this thing more than you. And so build the thing that's going to achieve that, right? And you're going to find success. But as soon as you build that thing and you start getting customers, they immediately start saying, wow, this is working for me. What else can you do for me? What else can you do for me? What else, right? And so the driving force behind, I think, some of the expansion or even distraction in terms of what people ultimately build and deliver for their customers is often a result of customer requests and the fact that you have to continuously grow top line. And so you think about businesses that have, had a single channel or something that they were extremely strong in, better than anybody else. They grew to a point where they had, so much market share, and then they have investors, or they're trying to go public or whatever it may be, and they need a second act, right? They need another product, they need other things to be able to expand with their customers. We have a measure in our space called net dollar retention, right? And it's not just like how much do you retain of your customer base, but how much of your existing customer base are you able to grow year over year? And it's a really critical metric to understand how successful a software is, right? And how good they are at expanding their relationship with the brands that they work with or the retailers that they work with. And so there's a lot of pressure to be able to do everything for everyone. And you hear, I mean, I'll ask you, like, I'm sure you've walked in and said, well, I want it all in one place, right? I want, I don't want a point solution. Well, I think the point solutions oftentimes are the better solution. Is it maybe easier for you or your team to manage? Sure. And like that's why we all end up going there, because we want to solve that problem. But I've never seen anybody really be able to solve it at scale the way that you would want.
Yeah, and it's hard because, the idea of a point solution, I like to, maybe it's not so nice, one throat to choke when, I know where to go. And, one of the challenges, if you look at and the companies we've just been talking about, Bluecore went from a trigger email program to an ESP and added in SMS and wanted to do some other things. Attentive started out as an SMS provider and then became, added in ESP. And when they sell today, and I've been through RFPs with, let's say, Attentive, they need to get past the fact of, We are, many people know them as the best SMS solution out there, but an up and comer in email. And people want to decide, do I really, is what's more important, having it all under one roof or working with best in class SMS and maybe a best in class email provider?
And I'm sure we're going to get into some of this as well. I mean, I think that there is an opportunity in the future for retailers to not have to choose, right? I think that AI offers a really great opportunity to be able to orchestrate things in a different way that ultimately can allow you to pick the channel provider that is best for you.
Want to make your customer journey more valuable? Meet Ebo, an all in one loyalty solutions provider that helps brands build stronger connections and drive significant revenue outcomes. With Ebo's loyalty ecosystem, brands can build custom programs, including paid programs, engagement, and tiered experiences that meet customers where they are and take them where they want them to go. Ready to increase engagement, enhance monetization, and maximize revenue? Visit ebo.com today. Ebo, one loyalty ecosystem, limitless growth. So let's dig in that, and then we'll get to Velou. AI, in your mind, what is AI for those that are not initiated?
It's a buzzword these days, isn't it? I feel like you probably hear it a lot. AI is about teaching machines to understand, reason, and act, right? So just like humans, I would say that it needs clear and consistent information to think effectively. And so really, AI to me and to the business that we're building is about better data, right? The better your data, the better your AI is going to perform and the better your brand is going to be surfaced in the places that you want it to be surfaced. And that's where we sort of get into this whole agentic universe and making sure that you're showing up the way customers are beginning to discover their products.
And so your company that you're at now, COO at Velou, tell us about what that company is and what you guys are bringing to market.
Yeah, so we are the first company to do product catalog agents. For sort of layman's terms, this just means that we create AI versions of product catalogs. And we sort of live in two worlds, right? There's this keyword-based world that everyone exists in now in terms of the revenue that they're driving, or at least the bulk of it. And in that universe, we automate the creation of product catalogs, right, which has typically been a very manual process. We can write titles, descriptions, taxonomies, attributes, synonyms, long form content for NLP-based systems, like all of the things, if you will. And we can push those into all of the existing channels. I think that as we think towards the future, and this can be a little scary for marketers, so I'm going to put kids gloves on a little bit, right? But I fundamentally believe that in 5 to 10 years there will not be e-commerce websites, right? I think that there will be, editorial sites where we're getting inspiration from brands that we care about. But ultimately, I think that I will be going to a Perplexity, an Anthropic, a ChatGPT search, personal agent, whatever it may be, and going and discovering products by asking kind of semantic questions about what it is that I'm going to do and the things that I would need to do that. And so I do think that there's this sort of big paradigm shift, and it's going to be interesting from, consumer focused commerce to agentic focused commerce. And what does that look like for brands as, and this is a challenging statement really for folks to just kind of think about, but what if you don't own the customer relationship anymore, right? What if the thing that you own and your biggest asset is your product catalog and its ability to describe itself in an AI world, or and then ultimately be able to push into the channels to be discovered, right? And that is, I think, the paradigm shift that is going to happen over the next 5 years, and we're already seeing a lot of it. I mean, Gartner said that 30% of traffic will be agentic by the end of this year. How are people managing that? How are they measuring it? What do they know about it? It's going to be a really fascinating time, and I do think that the product catalog becomes the real star in that scenario. You're going to have, the product catalog and what's called an MCP server will be the websites of the future, if you will.
Does it matter if I have a business where the catalog library is fairly small as opposed to one that's, more extensive?
No, I mean, we're seeing from brands that we work with that are small that we're getting tons of performance in keyword-based systems by enriching product data, right? We're getting better acquisition, even better on-site conversion. I think what I'm saying though, when we talk about an agentic world, when you're catering to a perplexity, is that if you're not playing that game, if you don't have a product catalog agent that can speak what agents or perplexity speaks, you just won't show up. You'll be irrelevant, right? And so this is about being discoverable by your customers in the future. And I think that's as small a catalog to as big a catalog problem.
One of the things, you talked about earlier about me was, questions that I would ask about measurement. Often, I remember numerous conversations when we first were at bluecore about, telling me about how this was actually going to work. So, with somebody that might work with Velou, how are they going to determine whether or not you're bringing value to them? What's the measurement of success?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you a bunch that we think about and care about. I think at the end of the day, most people point to ROI or ROAS as the thing that matters the most. And so that's the thing that we're driving towards with the brands that we work with. But I think measurement in just the AI space in general, but for us, will be how accurately and efficiently the AI improves the product catalog, right? And so it's about accuracy and classification and tagging and automation of that, right? I mean, there's a lot of like human enabled AI. Well, if something is 60% humans tagging it, how is that AI, right? That doesn't make sense to me. And so I think it really is about that accuracy. I think coverage, like really understanding how much of the catalog is being attributed with additional things, right? So high performing AI should work across an entire catalog, not just portions of it. Speed and scalability, are another one that I think are really big. Data consistency and integrity, right? Does the AI create more uniform and like reliable data that can be shared everywhere? I actually think that, think about this in the context of you have PIMs and feed tools now. I really think that's going to shift. You're going to have a product catalog agent that sort of does both of those things for you, but does it in a more uniform and reliable way. And then at the end of the day, it's business metrics, right? And discoverability, conversion rates, reduction in manual effort on the team, those types of things. But as we think about the business, like those are common metrics or things that I would challenge everybody who's looking at any AI. They really should be able to solve, again, solve a human task, like do a human task and drive better performance. I would warn folks that a lot of tech out there, most of it, I would say, that says it's AI has just slapped a large language model on top of an existing keyword-based system. It is not true AI, right? At the end of the day, it's probably getting like 70% of the way there, but to get from 70 to 90% accuracy is about 20x harder. To get from 90 to 99% accuracy is probably 100x harder, right? It's really hard to get to that fidelity that you're going to need to be successful.
Is there a vertical that is, I'll call it easier or more challenging from a product catalog to drive success with?
That's a good question. I mean, we work with so many random catalogs now. I think the key, like for our system, we can build an entirely new vertical category taxonomy in 2 days, right? So if we've never seen it before, our AI can get to a 99% accuracy very, very fast, right? And let's call it actually 98%. Like there's a little bit of fine tuning that's going to happen with anything like that. But we work with a lacrosse company, we work with a kayak company, right? But we really cut our teeth originally with apparel. And part of the reason and the decision behind that is that apparel is actually one of the hardest ones to solve for. There are so many variants. There are so many ways that people describe things. I was looking at a customer of ours the other day. Spaghetti strap has 21 synonyms, right? Like who knew? And no human actually has like the wherewithal to go and put all of that information so that other systems can understand and discover. If I go in and say I'm looking for a narrow strap dress for my wife, right? Like it's going to come up with no results by and large. And so I think that again, there's things here that just make it really powerful.
It's interesting, you're the second guest I've had over the last 10 shows or so, a woman named Chris Danton. Guess she's a writer and just an overall interesting woman in the marketing space. And she also had the same perspective that you did about, websites going away, and, using, Chat GPT and or Perplexity, to be doing and sites like that to be doing your shopping through. I had an interesting Chat GPT. I was playing around. I had an MRI recently on my back, and I got the report back. I copy and pasted the report into ChatGPT and said, I asked it, tell me what this really means. And it gave me a layman's perspective of, what all the medical terminology was, and it interpreted it. And then I showed it to a doctor, and the doctor's like, yeah, this is pretty good. It's just amazing what can get done.
Well, and so fast, right? I mean, for your audience, go to Perplexity, shop. Go check it out. Go say, hey, I'm looking for a pair of jeans. I was doing something for a friend the other day that I said, give me something obscure that you like, you would shop for. And they said, well, I'm a quilter. I'd like a sewing machine. I was like, great. What are the best sewing machines for quilting with intricate designs? And it came up with a whole, almost like a Google Shopping, right? A bunch of products. And then it says buy with Pro. And when you click on that, you purchase through Perplexity. And that particular one was Target. There was a Walmart option, there were a bunch. It literally went to Target, purchased, and sent it, right? That's what it can do. And so think about the conversion funnel there. It just got completely flattened. Everything happened in the span of 5 minutes versus like consideration and all of the kind of acquisition and all the various things that happen prior. It all just happened right there.
Interesting stuff. I can't wait to see, how things change. I have a granddaughter who is, I got to give her a plug in almost every
Yeah, I
show. No,
love it.
Gavin, she's 6 months old now. I sit and I look at her and I wonder, when she's getting ready to go to college, what her life is going to be like from a technology perspective. It's really incredible how things have changed.
Well, I know you don't share video, but so everybody knows he has a huge smile on his face when he talks about his family.
Yeah, this is true. All right, we are at the end of the show, Gavin. Thank you. We do a 2-minute drill, 7 questions, one word answer. Are you ready?
One word answer. Oh man, really?
No, nobody ever does one word.
All right, I'm not going to do one word then. Here we go.
I have to say, a brand that you admire or that inspires you.
Nike, because I had to have Pro Wings when I was a kid.
Favorite app on your phone.
Music League is my favorite one with groups. Ground News it tells me the bias in articles, uses AI to tell me what bias is in an article.
Well, you can't read an article today without bias, so
It's fascinating. The check it out, Ground News. I would highly recommend it.
last website other than Amazon that you shopped from.
Banana Republic, they had a big sale, and I really love their traveler pants.
Something that you're not good at but wish that you were.
I wish I was a better listener. My ADHD.
Charitable organization that you're passionate about.
Special Olympics and the Feast.
If you had one superpower, what would it be?
Time travel.
Other than family, what's your most prized possession?
Friends and my golf clubs. But I never get to play because I have a startup, so it doesn't even matter anymore. But
Well, if you get to the East Coast, bring your clubs with you and we'll go play somewhere, okay?
all
Or
right.
you can rent clubs. Where can people reach out to you on social media if they'd like to?
LinkedIn's the best place for me.
Okay, great. Gavin, this was really good. Thank you for battling through a little cold there. I really appreciate it. It was nice to see you and hope to see you in person sometime soon.
Thank you and continued success.
That's it. Today's game ball goes to Gavin Hewitt for coming on the marketing playbook. To me, today's 3 game-winning marketing plays were as follows. Number 1, the greatest asset any company has are the people. As Gavin noted, the people make the party. So if you're running a company, take a moment to think about the investment you make in your people, whether it be education, career development, coaching, or simply offering the people the opportunity to enjoy a balance between work and home life. Keep in mind that without these people, you don't have a company. And number 2, a good idea can come from anywhere, which is why collaboration is so important. Some companies are product focused, others are sales focused, and some are technology focused. But regardless, all groups must work together on behalf of your customers. In the end, you are selling, and as Gavin mentioned, sales is a team sport. So get everyone aligned on the message of what you're bringing to market. And number three, AI. Gavin noted that artificial intelligence is the art and science behind teaching machines to understand, reason, and act. These machines need clear and consistent information and the best data possible to develop the output being requested. Everyone seems to be talking about AI, so if you don't have a plan for your business and how to best leverage these tools, then you're falling behind. Gavin is the second person we've had on the show recently who talked about how we will be shopping in the future, and perhaps it won't be from the traditional branded websites we have today. So more change is coming, and will your business be ready? Thank you, Playbook marketers, for listening to another episode. If you want to check out more pages of the Marketing Playbook, make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast spot and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Until next time, the devil is in the details.